It's her last year here. After this, the house resets. That's what my daughter-in-law announced out loud, in front of 20 people while placing a gift-wrapped box of antique-looking keys on the buffet table next to my birthday cake. I remember blinking a few times, confused, thinking I had misheard. I was still holding the knife I'd used to cut the first slice of my cake. White buttercream on my wrist, the candles still flickering. My granddaughter, Ava, just 6 years old, sitting cross-legged at my feet on the rug, humming the birthday song over and over. And yet, above it all, her voice rang out again. This was her last year here. We're rotating the ownership. Some people chuckled awkwardly. One of my husband's cousins looked at me, then at my daughter-in-law, then back at me, uncertain whether to clap or pretend nothing had happened. But I saw my son shift his weight. I saw his shoulders tighten, and I saw how he didn't say a word. I had given birth to that boy, raised him through pneumonia and bad math grades, stood outside the DMV in the rain so he could get his license the moment he turned 16. And now, he couldn't even meet my eyes. The room didn't go silent. Not entirely. There was a nervous undercurrent of murmurs, of glass clinks, of people pretending to return to their drinks. But I was no longer part of the party. I was the party trick. If you've ever seen a woman get erased in real time, you'd know the feeling in the pit of my stomach. Hollow. Cold. I stood there like a portrait someone forgot to take off the wall when redecorating. And then my daughter-in-law, Cassandra, her name as sharp as her stare, turned back toward me with a smug little smirk. We figured you'd want the new keys early. That way you're not caught off guard next year. She handed me the small box. It was heavy, real brass. I didn't take it. I didn't move at all. Not until Ava looked up and said, "Grandma, are you going somewhere?" That broke me. I forced a smile. I bent down and kissed Ava's forehead. "No." "Sweet girl. I'm right here." But I wasn't. I was already halfway out the door emotionally, evicted by a single sentence spoken over cake. If you've ever witnessed a woman being pushed out of her own life, her space, her identity, her family, stay with me. This story may sound unthinkable, but it happened. To me. On my 66th birthday. And I want to know, have you ever seen something like this happen where you live? Drop your city in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone. And if you think women like me deserve a voice again, hit subscribe because what comes next is justice. Slowly, painfully earned. After the party, I stayed behind in the kitchen to rinse the glasses. I always did that. Even when I wasn't technically hosting. It was a habit from years of being the one who smoothed over awkward silences and refilled the water pitchers. Cassandra didn't offer to help. She never did. She hovered like she was inspecting my efficiency. "You shouldn't do all that," she said, casually leaning against the fridge. "You'll tire yourself out. At your age." I dried my hands on a dish towel. I'm perfectly capable. "You won't be much longer," she said under her breath, but not quietly enough for me to miss it. I paused. "Excuse me?" She gave me that smile again, that sideways, polite, teeth-clenched kind of smile that people give when they're saying one thing but mean another. I mean, transitions are hard, but it's better to plan ahead. We don't want anyone confused next spring. Next spring, I repeated. We're converting your room. Jack wants a home office, soundproof. Jack, my son, had never mentioned such a thing to me, not once. I walked back into the living room. People were leaving now, filtering out with coats and party favors. The house was quieting down, but I noticed something strange. The front door, where the antique Yale lock used to be, had a new smart system installed. Not just a keypad, but a camera, a full ring doorbell kit, neatly drilled and sealed into the wood panel. When did that happen? That evening. I sat in my bedroom, staring at my nightstand. The framed photo of my late husband smiled at me. He passed just 2 years ago. We built this house together. Every room held echoes of our laughter. The crown moulding in the hallway still had a tiny nick from when he dropped the ladder installing it. He once said, "This house will always have a place for you, even when I'm gone." I never imagined that the ones who stayed would be the ones to push me out. The next morning, I couldn't get into the laundry room. The keypad on the door blinked red. We had to update the security. Cassandra said when I asked, "There were incidents in the neighborhood. You'll get used to it. Or let me know if you want something simplified for your generation." For my generation. She had started speaking in euphemisms. The way people do when they're trying to tell you you're obsolete without sounding cruel. Except it was cruel, just masked in passive-aggressive politeness. Later that week, I heard her talking on the phone. She didn't know I was standing in the hallway. "No, I mean it next year. We'll reconfigure everything. It'll just be us. A clean start. That's the whole point of the reset. No inherited obligations. Inherited obligations. That's what I had become. Not a mother, not a grandmother, not even a person with a birthday worth celebrating. Just an obligation. Do you think there's a difference between being erased and being replaced? Or is one just the first step toward the other? Tell me in the comments. I need to know if others have felt this slow vanishing act too. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had already started packing, not to leave, but because I didn't want them to touch my things. If she could change locks without asking, what else could she take? Then came the final insult. I came home from the grocery store, arms full of paper bags, and my key didn't work. I stood there, trying it 3 times, then 4. I knocked, no answer. Finally, Cassandra opened the door an inch. She looked surprised. "Oh, didn't Jack tell you? We synced the locks to new access codes, for safety. I'll text it to you. You locked me out," I said, stunned. "No?" she said. "We're updating the system. It's still your house. For now?" She shut the door, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just thoughtless behavior. This was a plan. Coordinated, muted, strategic. I stood on my own porch, holding milk and bananas, and felt like a guest in the house I helped build. And the worst part, Jack still hadn't said a word. But what I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this birthday would not mark the end of my place here. It would mark the beginning of something far more powerful. Because when you take everything from someone, you leave them with nothing to lose. The days that followed were quiet. Not peaceful quiet, like a hallway after the lights go out. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're trespassing in your own home. The Monday after my birthday, I woke up to find the living room rearranged. The armchair I always sat in to do my morning crossword was gone. Not moved. Gone. In its place was a tall fiddle-leaf fig tree in a white pot, flanked by a standing lamp and 2 minimalist side chairs I had never seen before. I stood there in my robe and slippers, looking around like I had entered a staged Airbnb. I walked into the kitchen and opened the top cabinet for my teacup, the one with the chip on the side I always reached for, but it wasn't there. None of my mugs were. In fact, the whole cabinet was empty. I opened the next one. Sleek, white ceramic mugs, all matching, all new, with tiny gold initials embossed on the sides. C plus J, Cassandra and Jack. I checked the trash. Nothing. No old mugs. No note. No explanation. When Jack walked into the kitchen, I pointed toward the cabinet. What happened to the old ones? He didn't look up from his phone. Cassandra said they were outdated. They were mine. She's redoing the space. Mum, just let her handle it? But I stopped. His tone had that edge again. The one he never used on her. The one I hadn't heard since he was a teenager. That afternoon, I found my laundry basket sitting outside my bedroom door. Full. Folded. With a note taped to the top. We're testing a new cleaning service. For now, please keep your laundry separate. My laundry had never been a problem. I had folded towels with military corners since the 80s. But now, I was being gently nudged out of the routines that made me feel useful. I knocked on their bedroom door. Cassandra answered. Phone in hand? Not looking up. Yes, I just wanted to ask. She raised a finger. One sec. I waited. When she finished, she tucked the phone away. Everything okay? My laundry, I said. Was there an issue? No, it's just a preference. We're optimizing. It's better for scheduling. Scheduling systemization makes space more livable. She smiled, using words like a corporate memo, minimal overlap. No. I didn't. The next change came in the hallway. I'd always kept a small table under the staircase with a framed photo of my wedding day, a candy dish, and a calendar. One morning, the table was gone. In its place was a long, narrow bench and a minimalist mirror with a little sign underneath. Welcome to the Jenkins home. Est. 2021. I stared at it. Est. 2021. This house was built in 1989. I helped pick the brick colour. I planted the birch tree out front with my bare hands. 2021 was the year Cassandra moved in. I took the sign down. Quietly. Placed it in the hall closet. The next morning, it was back up. The week after that, Cassandra installed zones. Her word, not mine. Little laminated labels appeared in drawers and cabinets. Meal prep only, dry snacks, toddler-friendly activewear. Owners. Only the linen closet, which I had organized for decades, was now locked. I had to knock to get a towel. She said it was to reduce cross-contamination. Then, the medicine cabinet. My blood pressure medication. Gone. In its place, a basket of essential oils and a folded card labeled Holistic Rotation Week. When I asked where my pills were, she blinked and said, Oh, I put them in your new drawer. Didn't Jack tell you I had no new drawer? She showed me downstairs, in the garage hallway, a plastic utility box with my name on it. Inside my meds, an old nail file, and a travel-sized lotion I hadn't seen in years. See, she said, everything's accessible. It's just better flow this way. Better flow. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I began writing things down, not in a notebook. That could be found. I wrote one word a day on a strip of masking tape hidden beneath the bottom drawer of my vanity. Words like keys, cabinet, deleted, towels, garage. They were my breadcrumbs, little reminders that I wasn't imagining the shift, because this wasn't just a power move. It was a quiet campaign, a campaign of erasure. The kids stopped coming to me with their stories. Ava used to run into my room every evening to tell me about her day at preschool. Now, I heard her reciting them to Cassandra in the kitchen. I'd walk in and say, Oh, what did you draw today? Ava, and she'd shrug and say, Mommy already saw it. The bedtime stories stopped, too. replaced by a white noise machine and an iPad. Even my volunteer schedule, my weekly shifts at the church food pantry somehow got cancelled. I only found out when the coordinator texted me, saying, "So sorry you're unavailable for the month. We'll miss you." I hadn't told them that. But Cassandra was the one who handled our shared Google Calendar. She had streamlined it last year, merging everything into one family plan, one night. I opened the fridge to find a sticky note on my container of leftovers. "Please consume within 24 HRs to avoid waste." It was in red ink. That same evening, I found my bedroom door slightly ajar. Inside, my things were rearranged. The book I'd left face down on the dresser was shelved. My slippers had been moved. My pillowcase changed. When I asked Jack, he said, "Cassandra thought she'd help you reset your space. You're always saying how clutter makes it harder to sleep." I never said that. I sat on my bed and stared at my closet. Half of my clothes were gone. Just gone. "Seasonal donation," Cassandra said when I finally confronted her. "It's a new project. I started monthly wardrobe edits. I did mine, too. You didn't ask. I thought it'd be a nice surprise." It was around then that I started to realize I was no longer living in this house. I was being archived inside it. Do you think there's a line between help and control? Or are we just so used to kindness being a weapon that we forget what real care looks like? Share your thoughts in the comments. Maybe someone else out there needs to read your story today, on Sunday morning. I woke up to a different scent in the air. Paint. I walked out into the hallway and nearly gasped. The walls, previously warm cream, were now matte grey. Industrial. Cold. The gallery of family photos I'd curated for 30 years was gone. In its place, abstract art prints and a black and white canvas of a mountain range. I found the photo frames stacked in a box near the garage, labelled Legacy Archive. The most jarring thing was the portrait of Jack as a child, the one from his 4th birthday. With cake on his nose and a smile that could melt steel that one was missing entirely. I asked Cassandra where it was. She said, "Oh, I couldn't find a frame that matched the rest, so I left it out." That night, I heard her on the phone again, whispering, laughing. It's like she doesn't even notice. She said, "We're almost there." Almost where I pressed my ear to the wall. Heart racing. Next phase starts next month. Room reassignment. She won't need hers much longer anyway. My room. My room. I stood there for a long time, gripping the hallway railing. Then, slowly, I walked back to my room, shut the door, and sat in the dark. This house, once a haven of shared memories and overlapping generations, had become a stage being set for a play I was not invited to. And I had a sinking feeling the final act was coming soon. It began with silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that prickles. The kind you notice only after the door has closed and the footsteps have faded, and you realize nobody's coming back to open it. The house didn't feel like it was shrinking. I felt like I used to hear Ava giggling in the hallway every morning. She'd tiptoe into my room with messy hair and tell me she was a sneaky bunny while I pretended to sleep. Now, the mornings passed with only the faint buzz of the espresso machine and the smooth, adult voices of her parents behind closed doors. When I peeked my head into the kitchen one morning to say good morning, Ava looked up and blinked, confused, as if I were the neighbor rather than the woman who once rocked her to sleep during colic nights. At first, I tried to rationalize. Maybe they were just busy, maybe the school schedule changed. But it wasn't just mornings. It was dinner, too. Meals used to be shared, nothing fancy, just together. Now, I would find the table already cleared when I came down, a few rinsed plates in the sink, and an empty wine glass on the counter. One evening, I opened the fridge to find a small labelled container, portion reserved Emiel side salad only. That was my dinner. I sat at the kitchen island that night, eating in silence under the dim light above the sink, while I heard the soft murmur of laughter from upstairs. My own son's voice, mingled with hers, their private little upstairs world. I sent a message to an old friend, Margaret, whom I hadn't seen in a while. We used to go to the senior centre on Tuesdays for watercolour classes. I asked if she wanted to meet for coffee. She replied hours later. "Didn't Jack say you were out of town? Let me know when you're back." I blinked at the screen. Out of town, I hadn't left the city in 6 months. That weekend, I received an automated email cancelling my membership at the community pool. No explanation. I hadn't missed a payment. I hadn't cancelled. When I confronted Jack, he rubbed the back of his neck and avoided eye contact. "Cass was managing your subscriptions. She thought it might be too much for you right now. Too much for me." "I'm not losing my mind," I said, quietly. He looked at me like he wanted to say something but didn't. Instead, he mumbled, "Maybe you should talk to someone. A professional. You've seemed tense lately." And there it was. That word. That carefully chosen word. Tense. Not sad. Not mistreated. Tense. As if my confusion and isolation were just personal quirks. Emotional weather. It's called gaslighting, I think. I had read about it once, when someone slowly erodes your perception of reality until you begin to question your memory, your instincts, even your identity. I wasn't there yet, but I could feel the soil shifting beneath my feet. One day, I returned home from a walk to find my photo albums missing from the living room shelves. Every single one. Decades of carefully preserved pictures, birthdays, vacations, Jack's graduation, my late husband's last Thanksgiving gone. In their place, a set of neutral-toned books with meaningless titles: Calm, Home Harmony, Modern Living. I opened each one. Hollow boxes. I marched upstairs, knocked on their door, and asked where the albums were. "Oh, they're in storage now," Cassandra said without turning from her laptop. "Digitization project." I didn't approve that. "It's just for safekeeping." "You said you were worried about the mold last year." I never said that. I started checking drawers, closets, even under the bed. Small things were disappearing. My blue wool scarf, the brooch from my wedding day, the recipe card box I'd kept since 1979. When I asked, Cassandra always had an explanation. "Maybe you misplaced it, or you probably donated that. Remember, or didn't you say you were decluttering?" But I hadn't. I began to wonder if I really was forgetting things. I found myself writing little reminders on my palm with a ballpoint pen, like I used to do in college. Check linen closet. Call Nancy. Birthday. Next Thursday, I was becoming suspicious of my own memory. Then came the Sunday morning service. I always attended the 9 Mass at St. Luke's. Always. It was my sanctuary. But that day, when I got there, Father Hamilton greeted me with hesitation. "Glad you're back," he said. "We missed you during your break." "What break?" Jack said you were travelling, something about extended rest. I smiled, but my stomach dropped. They were rewriting me. Quietly. Thoroughly. Even my spiritual life was being redacted. I sat in the pew that morning with trembling hands. The stained glass windows felt colder than usual. The light that filtered through didn't warm me. It felt distant, sterile. Later that week, I called my niece. Linda? I just needed to hear a familiar voice. I was wondering when you'd call, she said. Is everything okay? Cassandra messaged me asking not to overwhelm you with family stuff. She said you're in a reflection phase. A reflection phase. That wasn't a real thing. I'm fine, I said, trying to steady my voice. I want you to know if you don't hear from me, it's not because I don't want to talk. She paused. Aunt Ruth, are you safe? That stopped me. No one had asked me that yet. I think so, I said, but I didn't sound convinced. Have you ever been slowly pushed out of your own life so gently, so politely, that you questioned if it was even happening? If so, please share in the comments. I want others to know they're not losing their minds. Sometimes it's not sudden. Sometimes it's 1,000 cuts you can't prove. The final straw came one Wednesday afternoon when I went to pick up Ava from her art class, as I used to every other week. The school administrator looked confused. Cassandra said you wouldn't be doing pickups anymore. I didn't say that. I replied, stunned. She checked her clipboard. You've been removed from the emergency list. Sorry. I'm not allowed to release her to anyone not on the updated form. I stood there in the parking lot while Ava waved from the window of her classroom, not understanding why Grandma wasn't coming inside. I walked home, legs heavy, heart heavier. Inside the front door, I found a new note on the refrigerator. Please notify before entering shared kitchen spaces. Transition period in progress. What did that even mean? I went to my room and shut the door, finally allowing myself to cry. Not the loud, angry cry I expected. Just a slow, leaking one like a pipe giving way behind drywall. When I wiped my eyes, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in months, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked small, fragile, ghosted. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like a signal I no longer understood. I opened my window and sat on the floor, listening to the breeze. That house had once been my kingdom. I knew the rhythm of its walls, the way the sun slanted through the laundry room window in the fall, the scent of pine cleaner on Sunday afternoons. And now, every room carried the residue of someone else's design. And that's when I heard something I wasn't meant to hear. Cassandra's voice, muffled through the wall, sharp and certain. She won't last much longer. She's unraveling. Trust me, it's working. I froze. Not mistaken, not vague. A direct confession. And suddenly, everything made sense. The isolation wasn't accidental. It was engineered. But if she thought I was unraveling, she had no idea how tightly I could hold on. It happened on a Thursday morning. A small thing, at first. A knock at the door. I hadn't ordered anything. I wasn't expecting guests. But when I opened it, a young man in a blue uniform stood on the porch, holding a clipboard and a stack of files. Delivery for Cassandra Jenkins, he said. I can take it, I replied, reaching out automatically. Actually, she needs to sign this. It's time-sensitive. Health Services compliance documents. I blinked. Health. What kind of services? He flipped the clipboard around and pointed to a box that was checked in-home elder transition and oversight package. Phase 2. Something inside me twisted. What does that mean, Mom? I'm just the courier. But it says here this is for review prior to care plan activation, usually for assisted transitions. Is there a Ruth Jenkins here? That's me? He hesitated. Well, uh, according to this, you're the patient. But again, I just deliver stuff. He handed me the folder and left. I stood there for several minutes, the door still open, wind pushing against my slippers. I hadn't requested any oversight. I hadn't signed up for any transition. I wasn't moving anywhere. And yet, there was my name, in bold letters, on forms with words like cognitive decline assessment and primary caretaker certification. I shut the door and carried the packet to my room like it might explode. I flipped through it carefully. Every page detailed some component of long-term care planning, all tied to my name, all filled with Cassandra's contact info as responsible party. Not Jack's, not mine, hers. That evening, I waited until the house was quiet. I crept into the home office, formerly my husband's den, and checked the desk drawers. Locked. But the top drawer was slightly off kilter, like it had been opened in a rush. I gently wiggled it and felt something slide back. I reached behind the file tray and pulled out a second set of forms. These were different. Not medical. Legal. I couldn't make sense of all of it, dense with language about durable authority, health directives, property co-ownership. But I saw my signature on the last page, or rather, a shaky version of it. Except, I never signed anything. I stared at the date. It was 3 weeks ago. The same week they cancelled my church visits, removed me from Ava's pickup list, and boxed my photo albums. They weren't just phasing me out. They were preparing to declare me incompetent. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I called my primary doctor. She had been treating me for years, Dr. Ramirez, a steady, kind woman with blunt advice and strong coffee breath. "Hi," I said. "I just wanted to check on something. Did you submit anything recently about my cognitive health?" She paused. "No." Why, I explained. Carefully. She was silent for a moment. "That doesn't sound right. Ruth, your records are clean. No flags, no referrals, nothing." I swallowed hard. Could someone have requested something behind my back, not without consent unless there was a formal claim? And if there was, I'd know. And so would you. That afternoon, I found a slip of paper tucked under my door. It wasn't signed. It simply read, "Please don't ask questions that make things harder. We're trying to help you." The handwriting was familiar, neat, controlled. Cassandra's. That evening, I walked to the corner pharmacy, not for medication, for clarity. "Excuse me," I said to the woman behind the counter. "Have any prescriptions for Ruth Jenkins been transferred recently?" She typed something, then frowned. "Actually, yes. Your file was reassigned to a home health liaison. Looks like some orders were converted to once-weekly dispensers. First delivery next week. I didn't request that." She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't sign the new form, no." She glanced at me with concern. "You might want to speak to your physician directly." I walked home slowly. The evening wind colder than usual. Every tree branch looked like a warning. Every passing car like a witness to something no one would believe. And then fate handed me something unexpected. Our old neighbor, Pam, showed up on the sidewalk. "Ruth," she said. Surprised. "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in ages. How are you?" I smiled weakly. "Still standing." She chuckled. "I almost didn't recognize the house. Cassandra's been busy? Is it true what she said? What did she say, that you're moving to a care center? That Jack's taking over everything?" I stared at her. "She told you that Pam looked uncomfortable." "Well, at the HOA meeting, She said you'd already signed over power of attorney and were preparing for a gentle retirement, that you were, quote, ready to transition out of household responsibility. I felt my knees wobble. I didn't sign anything. I said, I'm not going anywhere. Pam's eyes widened. Oh, oh no, I'm so sorry. Her face said everything. She knew. She had believed Cassandra. And now, she realized she'd been used as an echo chamber. That night, I took every document I could find and began photographing them. I started a secret email chain to myself with every image, every suspicious date, every odd delivery. I included notes, times, conversations, snapshots of medicine labels that had been relabeled, and I saved them all under a fake folder name, Knitting Patterns. Because I finally understood I wasn't crazy. I wasn't declining. I was being curated out of existence. What would you do if someone tried to rewrite your life in front of you, page by page, and no one believed you? Would you fight? Would you stay silent to keep the peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. Some of us need to see that others have made it through this kind of betrayal. I needed a plan, and that's when fate gave me another gift, a small one, a crack in Cassandra's perfect wall. The next morning, the cleaning lady came. She was young, quiet, and always polite. Her name was Lila. I had noticed her taking photos of the rooms sometimes, which I assumed was for documentation. But that day, as she walked past my room, she paused and whispered, "Do you want to see something?" I nodded, cautious. She handed me her phone, already opened to a video. It was footage from her body cam, time-stamped 2 days prior. In the video, Cassandra is speaking on the phone in the kitchen. Lila must have placed the phone down on the counter while cleaning. She has no idea, Cassandra says, laughing. Jack signed everything. She'll be in that facility by summer, and we'll finally have the house to ourselves. You should see her wandering around like she still lives here. My hands shook. Why did you record this? I whispered. Lila looked down. Because I've seen this before. My aunt. They did the same to her, and no one listened until it was too late. Why are you helping me? She shrugged. Because no one else is? I uploaded the video to my private folder. And just like that, the fear began to shift. I still felt trapped, still felt powerless. But I also felt something I hadn't in weeks. Focus. Because now I had proof, I had motive, and I had a witness. The next move was mine. For the first time in months, I stopped moving like a ghost and started moving like a witness. I had something now, something Cassandra couldn't manipulate or gaslight away, her own voice. Captured, confident, cold, planning to erase me with legal precision. The video from Lila became my anchor. It validated every suspicion, every "you're overthinking," every "you probably misplaced that." Every "just let Cassandra handle it" was now exposed as part of a quiet, calculated campaign. But one recording wasn't enough. I needed a pattern, a trail. So I began documenting, not sloppily, not like someone unraveling, but like someone building a case. I bought a cheap burner phone from a drugstore 2 towns over, paid in cash. I stored it beneath the floorboard under my nightstand, beneath an old layer of felt I had laid myself back in 1994. Every night, I used it to photograph things, labels, locks, calendars, emails left open on shared desktops. And then, something unusual happened. I received mail, not in the house mailbox, but in the small, forgotten P.O. box I had opened years ago for my antique book club one Cassandra didn't know about. A thin envelope, handwritten, inside a copy of a signature sheet from my bank. My real signature next to a forged one, dated 2 weeks prior. The forged one had granted Cassandra temporary authority to redirect financial correspondence due to household restructuring. I had never signed it. I held the paper in my hands for a long time. Not out of shock, I had moved past shock, but out of respect. This was the piece. The legal tether. The direct thread tying Cassandra's manipulation to action. I returned home and checked my financial app. Password changed. Security questions altered. I couldn't get in. Jack, of course, said it was for streamlining household budgeting. Said Cassandra had added automation to keep things simple. But it's my account, I said. It's all the same house, he mumbled. We're a family, but families don't reroute pensions. That night, I reached out to the only person who had known me longer than Jack, my late husband's law partner, Dennis Park. He was retired now, living in Arizona, but I still had his number saved in my address book under D. I called. It rang 6 times before I heard the familiar voice. Ruth, he said. Is everything okay? No? I said. But I'm working on it. I didn't explain everything over the phone, just enough. He didn't interrupt once. I'll overnight a recorder. He said, not the kind they sell in stores, real surveillance grade. Hide it in a lamp or book spine. Just get her talking. It arrived 2 days later. Meanwhile, I expanded my evidence map. I set up a secondary Gmail account, password protected, that auto-forwarded every note, photo, and clip to Dennis. I also began logging every time Cassandra lied. March 14th. Told Ava I had trouble remembering bedtime, so she wouldn't ask me to tuck her in. March 17th. Told Jack I lost the medication she herself had locked in the garage box. March 19th. Referred to herself as property administrator during phone call with solar panel rep. But the most alarming day came on March 23rd. That morning, I awoke to find all my bedroom outlets disabled. No phone charger, no lamp. When I asked, Cassandra said, "Oh, Jack and I installed a breaker limit. You kept leaving your humidifier on. It's safer this way." She had control over my electricity now. I used the recorder that afternoon. I placed it inside the spine of a faux book on the living room shelf, Mindful Spaces. A guide to modern interiors. A book she was always moving around to impress guests. Within an hour, I had gold. She was on the phone again. No, she hasn't figured it out. She thinks we're just helping her age gracefully. I've already got the power of attorney, we just need 2 doctors to say she's exhibiting signs. A pause. Yes, I'm working on the incident. Something small. Just enough. Something small. She was planning to manufacture a medical incident, a fabricated emergency. I could feel it in my gut. That evening, I took my burner phone and walked to the corner of the street, standing under a flickering lamppost while I uploaded the new audio clip to the cloud folder. And then I hesitated. I could release this now. Send it to my niece, to the church, to the HOA, to my doctor, to anyone. But would it be enough? Would a single audio clip prove legal abuse? Would a single video undo months of quiet erasure? Or would Cassandra twist it, as she always did, frame it as misunderstood humor, or miscommunication during caretaking, or a confused elder recording things she doesn't understand? If you had enough to fight back, but not everything, would you strike now or wait for the right moment? What would you risk by acting too soon? What would you lose by waiting too long? Tell me in the comments. This is the choice no one prepares you for. I decided to wait. Not out of fear, out of strategy. Cassandra was precise, but precision makes people predictable. And then, as if on cue, the moment I feared most arrived. Ava's school called me directly. "Hi, Mrs. Jenkins," the administrator said. "Is everything all right?" "Why, well, we just received an updated medical form from your daughter-in-law. It says you've been diagnosed with mild cognitive disorder and are no longer approved for child pickup. We need to confirm." I almost dropped the phone. "I haven't been diagnosed with anything," I said. A silence. "Would you like to send us the official documentation directly?" "Yes," I said, steadying myself. "Please send me what she submitted." They did. It was a scanned PDF, labeled Family Care Memo, Ruth Jenkins, Initial Evaluation. On the second page, a typed summary of my supposed symptoms: disorientation, memory fog, mood swings. None of it was true. But the letterhead. It belonged to a real clinic, except it wasn't my clinic. I called Dr. Ramirez again. "That's not our letterhead," she confirmed. "And those aren't our codes. Forged. A full medical forgery." I added the file to my folder, and now I had the trifecta. A recorded confession, a legal signature mismatch, a forged medical document tied to child custody denial. Cassandra had overplayed her hand. But before I could make my move, she made hers. The next morning, I found an envelope under my breakfast tray. Inside, a formal letter from a private memory care center. "We look forward to welcoming Ms. Ruth Jenkins for her initial 72-hour assessment stay this coming Tuesday. As per the signed family plan, logistics will be arranged by Mrs. Cassandra Jenkins. Thank you for trusting us." No warning. No discussion. A date was already set. She was planning to have me temporarily committed, and with Jack still silent, she probably thought it would go smoothly. But this time, she miscalculated. Because this time, I wasn't waiting. They say you should love your husband's mother. They say you should respect her, include her, listen to her stories, and learn her recipes. But no one ever warned me what to do when your mother-in-law lives in the walls of your marriage like inherited wallpaper, unremovable, outdated, and immune to change. I didn't always dislike Ruth. In fact, when Jack and I first got serious, I tried. I made the effort. I offered help, complimented her home, listened to the same stories more than once. But from the beginning, she looked at me with that faint, controlled smile, the kind women use when they're deciding whether or not you're their kind of girl. And I wasn't. I came from a trailer park outside Spokane. My mum worked night shifts at a motel and chain-smoked on our front porch every morning. She never told me I was beautiful. She told me I was clever, manipulative, a survivor. That I'd never marry well unless I kept my mouth pretty and my words few. I studied her advice like scripture, got scholarships, learned how to dress one level above my station, smiled more, spoke less. Jack was the golden ticket. Educated, steady, kind. But more than that, he came from stability, from dinners with cloth napkins, from birthdays with layered cakes, from women like Ruth, who measured worth by polish and patience. At first, I thought I could win her over. I mirrored her. I asked for tips. I even wore the perfume she once complimented. But it didn't matter. She never said it out loud. But I could feel it. I would never be enough. Not elegant enough. Not graceful enough. Not maternal enough. She called my cooking creative, which meant wrong. She said my clothes were fresh, which meant inappropriate. When I shared ideas for Ava's nursery, She nodded and said, "That's one approach," which meant not mine. But I endured until I gave birth. That's when things changed. Ruth moved from polite distance into subtle dominance. She corrected the way I held the baby. She rearranged Ava's bottles. She told the pediatrician I had a sensitive disposition when I asked about vaccinations. At first, Jack defended me, but over time, he defaulted, smiled, smoothed over, told me she means well, and she's just trying to help. He didn't notice how I started leaving rooms when she entered them. He didn't see the way I flinched when she opened Ava's dresser drawers like she still owned them. He didn't hear the little sigh she gave every time I loaded the dishwasher wrong. So I began building walls, small at first. I took over the calendar, switched Ava's doctor, reorganized the kitchen. Jack thought I was nesting. I was actually claiming territory. And then something shifted. After Ruth's husband died, she moved in temporarily. She said, "A month, maybe 2. That was 3 years ago." She didn't knock when entering rooms. She left comments on my parenting in post-it notes. She corrected me at PTA meetings. Once, she even updated our family holiday card draft without asking and ordered 200 copies. She had to go, but Jack wouldn't hear it. "She's my mother," he said. "She's grieving." I wanted to scream. So am I. I'm grieving the privacy we used to have. But instead, I smiled, and I planned. Do I feel guilty? No, because no one helped me reclaim my home. No one saw the way I withered under her presence. They saw a polite older woman, a victim, a grandmother. They didn't see the woman who read Ava bedtime stories just loud enough so I couldn't read mine. They didn't see the woman who moved my makeup into a different drawer because the other one breathes better. They didn't hear her tell Ava, "When you're at Grandma's, things are calmer." She was erasing me by inches, so I erased back. First, the locks. Jack didn't even ask why. He just installed them. Then the medication routines. A few misplaced pill bottles, and suddenly she started writing things down to remember them. Exactly what I needed. Then I took over communication, told the school she was no longer available, told the church she was on sabbatical, told her friends she was resting. I even started using phrases like cognitive load and emotional fog around guests. No one questioned me. Because when a younger woman says a senior is struggling, society leans in to protect her. When a daughter-in-law says she's overwhelmed by caretaking, people call her brave. And I was brave. Brave enough to take the house back. Brave enough to reclaim what was mine. Do I care that she cried on her birthday? No, because that was my line in the sand. That was the day I said, no more. No more quiet corners. No more whispered judgment. No more second place in my own home. That house had my name on it now. Jack didn't notice the documents. I told him we were updating our estate plan. He nodded and signed. He always did. The forgery necessary. The calendar blocks strategic. People think control looks like shouting. It doesn't. Control looks like structure, routine, stability. And when I submitted the intake request to the memory care center, I did it with calm hands and steady breath, because she would be safe there, and we would be free. Do I still love my husband? Yes. Do I wish I had done things differently? No. Because women like Ruth only understand permanence. She didn't hear me when I said I needed space. She only heard me when I changed the locks. I know what people will say, that I'm cold, that I'm calculated, that I'm cruel. But tell me this, if someone planted roots in your home without your permission and grew vines around your identity, how long would you let them stay? I gave her 3 years. Now I'm giving myself the rest of my life. Do you believe pain gives someone the right to control others? Can a broken past justify a ruthless present? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments. We need to talk honestly about the way trauma shapes power. Still, I know I'm close. Ruth has been quiet lately. She's watching me differently. Her eyes are less foggy, more focused. But that doesn't matter, because I'm going to finish this before she gets the chance. I always do. I wasn't looking for anyone to save me. By the time Cassandra had orchestrated my medical transition, I'd already accepted that no one inside this house was going to help. Jack had melted into silence. Ava had been folded into a narrative where Grandma was resting more these days. The walls knew the truth, but they didn't speak. And then came the doorbell. It was a Wednesday afternoon, the kind where everything feels slightly unreal, clouds too low, air too still. I wasn't expecting anyone, which these days meant I answered the door with my guard already raised. The woman standing on the porch wore navy blue scrubs, an ID badge clipped to her collar. She looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place her. Mrs. Ruth Jenkins, she asked. Yes, she hesitated. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. My name is Andrea Parks. I used to work at Riverside Rehabilitation. I think you were there briefly after your hip surgery. I blinked. It had been nearly a year. I remembered faces, but names were harder. Yes, I said slowly. Room 211. She smiled. I remembered. She shifted the tote bag on her shoulder. I'm not here officially. I no longer work there. But I've been trying to find you for weeks. I was let go. Cassandra said I had crossed a professional boundary. My blood froze. What kind of boundary? I reported a discrepancy. Andrea said, during your discharge, I noticed something odd in the charting system. Your next of kin designation had been changed twice, first to your son, then to Cassandra. Your original form listed your niece, Linda. I remembered that. I had updated my records to list Linda after my husband passed. She was my legal contact. I mentioned it to Cassandra casually during a follow-up call, and she told the facility I was unstable. 2 days later, I was removed. She paused, but before I left, I saved a copy of the authorization change log. It was irregular, time-stamped, and tied to an internal IP address. I figured you'd want to see it. She reached into her bag and handed me a sealed envelope. Inside, a printed sheet of database logs showing my patient profile. With highlighted lines, user Cassandra J. Proxy, access, action, override, contact authority, time 11:48 p.m., date, 3 days post-surgery. I stared at it, my hands trembling. She did it behind my back when I was on painkillers and barely conscious. She rewrote who got to speak for me. And in doing so, she'd rewritten everything that followed. Andrea sat with me on the porch steps. Your medical history still flags a pending review status, she said. It means any doctor or school or agency looking you up sees a red caution symbol, even if there's no diagnosis. She nodded. That symbol is enough. It makes people hesitate, delay, doubt you. I looked at her. Why are you helping me? She folded her hands. Because I've seen what happens when women like Cassandra get away with it. It starts with concern. Then it becomes management. Then it becomes erasure. I felt something click inside me, not like a door opening, but a bolt locking into place. She was the first person outside the house who believed me, who had seen the same patterns, who knew the game Cassandra was playing and called it by its name. I made tea. We sat for hours, going over everything. Andrea showed me screenshots, emails from the rehab center, notes Cassandra had sent to care coordinators, requesting I be gently transitioned to a lower demand routine. She used phrases like post-grief instability and environmental confusion. I showed Andrea the photos I'd taken, the forged forms, the recording Lila had captured in the kitchen. She nodded. You're building a strong case. But it wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about reclaiming the story. I had been framed as fragile, scattered, emotionally fading. But I was sharper now than I had ever been. Sometimes it doesn't take a rescue to change the course. Just a single witness who says, I see what's happening. Has someone ever spoken up for you when no one else would share your story in the comments? Someone reading might need the courage it gave you? Andrea left that night with a hug and a promise. You're not alone anymore. I believed her. The next morning, I began to act differently. I stopped tiptoeing. I stopped apologizing. I looked Cassandra in the eye at breakfast when she commented on my robe being a little worn. Good thing I have nothing left to lose. I replied, evenly. She blinked. And then something new happened. She started watching me, closely. I caught her glancing at my room door when she thought I wasn't looking. She stood too long near my tea mug, pretending to wipe the counter. She checked her phone every time I left the room. She knew I was shifting, and I wanted her to feel that. Because the minute a predator senses their prey has seen them, everything changes. That weekend, Jack asked if we could all have dinner together. A real one. At the table. He was trying, in his small way, to be a bridge. Cassandra agreed too quickly. I made chicken parmesan. We sat. We ate. It was quiet. And then I said, Jack, do you remember who we listed as my medical contact when I updated my chart last year? He paused, chewing slowly. Linda. I think Cassandra smiled too hard. That must have been a long time ago. I nodded. Strange. Because the rehab center has you down now, even though I never changed it. She froze for a second. A flicker. But it was enough. Jack looked up. You didn't change it, no, I said. And I have proof. I didn't elaborate. Let her stew. Let her wonder what else I had. Later that night, I opened my email and created a new folder. I titled it Phase 2, The Unraveling. Because I wasn't afraid of her anymore. And I wasn't alone. It was a Sunday afternoon when I decided it would happen. Not in private. Not behind closed doors where lies could be whispered and dismissed. No. If Cassandra had orchestrated my quiet removal in silence and shadows, then I would reveal the truth in daylight, in front of those who had once nodded along with her, who had heard her version of me and never thought to ask mine. I waited for the perfect opportunity, and fate handed it to me. The neighborhood's annual HOA spring brunch. Every year, residents brought folding chairs and casseroles to the cul-de-sac, lawn games for kids, pastel decorations, homeowner updates. It was Cassandra's favorite stage. She loved nothing more than a well-curated event with a captive audience and a chance to show how put together our household was. This year, she was on the board, and she'd volunteered our family to help host the welcome table. I signed up to help too, smiled sweetly when she frowned. I thought we'd discussed boundaries. She said the morning of, Oh, I'm just helping. I replied, adjusting my cardigan. People still think of me as part of this family, after all. She didn't respond, but her jaw tightened. The table was already set when we arrived. Clipboards, coffee, mini muffins in pastel wrappers. Cassandra was in full charm mode, greeting neighbors like a local politician. I waited until the introductions were finished, until the crowd had gathered for the board announcements, until Jack was standing beside her, holding Ava's hand, smiling politely, unaware. And then I stepped forward. "I'd like to share something," I said. Cassandra froze. Jack looked confused. "Mom, I'll only take a minute," I said. "But I think some of you have heard a certain version of me over the past few months, and I think it's time you hear the rest." Cassandra's smile returned, tight and rehearsed. "This isn't the right." I held up a small black speaker, the kind with one button. I pressed play. Her voice filled the cul-de-sac. "She has no idea. Jack signed everything. She'll be in that facility by summer, and we'll finally have the house to ourselves." Gasps. Murmurs. Someone dropped their coffee. Jack looked at her like she'd slapped him. Cassandra tried to laugh. This was taken out of context. I pressed play again. "We just need 2 doctors to say she's exhibiting signs. I'm working on the incident. Something small. Just enough." Dead silence. I looked around. That's my daughter-in-law. Talking about manufacturing a medical incident to have me institutionalized. She forged my signature, changed my medical records, redirected my finances, and convinced many of you that I was confused, fragile, unwell. I reached into my bag and pulled out a binder. Inside, printouts of the forged documents, timestamps from Cassandra's proxy access, screenshots of her emails to the rehab center, and a notarized statement from Andrea, the former nurse. Jack took the binder, flipped through it. His hands began to shake. "Did you know I asked him?" He didn't answer. Cassandra stepped forward. "This is a family matter. No," I said, calmly. "You made it public. When you told the HOA I was leaving, when you claimed I was unfit, when you spoke for me while planning to erase me." Someone in the back murmured, "I remember that email." Another whispered, "She told me Ruth was already in a facility." Cassandra's eyes darted. "You're manipulating this, twisting it to get sympathy." "And you weren't," I replied. She didn't answer. Jack looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in months. Maybe years? "Did you sign for her?" he asked softly. She didn't deny it. And that was all it took. He stepped away from her. Cassandra's expression changed not into guilt, but calculation. She scanned the crowd, searching for allies. But no one met her gaze. Even Ava looked confused. The neighbors weren't angry. Not yet. But they were questioning. That was worse, because doubt is slow-moving and permanent. It doesn't burn, it corrodes. Cassandra turned toward me. "You think this proves anything?" "A couple recordings, old paperwork." I nodded. "It proves enough, and it's only the beginning." She scoffed and walked away. Jack followed. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. People approached me in ones and twos. Quiet apologies. Soft acknowledgements. A hand on the shoulder. A squeeze of support. They didn't know. They believed her. They never thought to ask. And I didn't blame them. That's how it happens. After all, slowly, subtly, with smiles and spreadsheets and just enough plausible deniability to keep the lies polite. But now, The curtain had been pulled back, and everyone saw the stage. If you were standing there that day, watching a mother confront the woman who tried to erase her, would you speak up? Would you stay silent? Whose side would you be on? Share it in the comments. The truth doesn't live in the dark. It lives in what we choose to say aloud. That evening, Jack came to my room. He didn't say much, just handed me the binder back. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want to see it." I nodded, and now I can't unsee it. He hesitated. "She's already meeting with a lawyer. She's going to spin this. Say you're attacking her. That the documents were faked. Let her try." He didn't respond, but he didn't defend her either. And that's when I knew this wasn't over, because Cassandra still had one card left to play, and she was going to use it. 3 days after the brunch, I walked into the law offices of Holbrook and Gaines in downtown Sacramento. I chose Sacramento because California has one of the most robust elder protection laws in the country, and because Cassandra had made the mistake of executing most of her manipulations using California-based institutions, our local rehab center, the HOA, and even my bank branch on 14th Street. The woman who greeted me was attorney Dana Reeves, late 40s, tightly pulled hair, sharp grey blazer, and a demeanor like a gavel in motion. She'd been referred to me by Dennis, my husband's former law partner. Dana didn't ask me to repeat the emotional parts. She asked for documents. I slid the binder across the table. A digital copy was already waiting in her inbox. She spent 20 minutes reading, lips barely moving, one manicured finger tapping rhythmically against her pen. When she finished, she closed the binder gently, folded her hands, and looked me in the eye. "Mrs. Jenkins," she said, "your daughter-in-law has committed no fewer than 3 violations of the California Penal Code, 2 federal offenses, and a direct breach of the California Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act." She tapped the binder. "This forged medical record alone, submitted to a school, is grounds for felony fraud under California Penal Code FR 115. She submitted a knowingly falsified document with intent to influence legal rights of another individual. That's prison time." I didn't breathe. "And this," she continued, holding up the power of attorney form with my forged signature, "is a direct violation of California Probate Code Para 4701, which requires notarized witnessed consent for durable power. What she submitted isn't just invalid, it's criminal." Dana paused, then said, in a voice so calm it felt like thunder, "Your daughter-in-law has systematically attempted to erase you, but under California law, what she did is not called managing a household. It's called elder abuse." I exhaled. Dana outlined the plan. First, a cease and desist, sent that day, notifying Cassandra of legal proceedings and ordering her to immediately relinquish any control over my accounts, records, and health directives. Second, filing for a temporary restraining order, specifically citing elder psychological manipulation and document forgery under the Elder Abuse Act. Third, a petition to revoke any assumed power of attorney and restore full legal autonomy to me, with an immediate audit of household financial redirection. But what came next surprised me. "We're also going to file a civil claim," Dana said. "Because this wasn't a misunderstanding, this was a strategy, and the law allows us to pursue damages for financial exploitation, emotional trauma, and wrongful interference with familial relationships." "Will she go to jail?" I asked. Dana leaned back. "That depends on how far she takes this. If she fights, she'll be investigated. If she lies under oath, she'll face perjury. But what I can promise you is this: she won't touch your name, your accounts, or your legacy again. The next morning, Cassandra received the cease and desist. I wasn't home when it was delivered, but Jack told me she screamed, that she tore the envelope in half before reading the letter and then locked herself in the downstairs guest bathroom for 2 hours. When she came out, her voice was even, controlled. "She's bluffing," she said, but I wasn't. 2 days later, a court representative served her at home with the notice of legal action. Jack was there. So was Ava. He read the documents twice, then asked, quietly, "Is it all true?" Cassandra didn't answer. She just looked at me and said, "You think anyone's going to care? You're old. They'll believe what I tell them." I stepped forward. "No, Cassandra. They'll believe the documents. They'll believe the recordings. They'll believe the nurse who lost her job for trying to protect me. And they'll believe the law." She didn't speak again. Not to me. Not to Jack. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. When we arrived at the courthouse, she wore white, a crisp blouse, hair pinned, a subtle pearl necklace. I wore blue, not because I wanted to look innocent, because I am. The judge reviewed the evidence silently for nearly 30 minutes. Then he turned to Cassandra. "Mrs. Jenkins," he said, "you are being accused of forging medical and legal documents, misrepresenting your mother-in-law's cognitive health to multiple institutions, and redirecting financial control without authorization." He paused. "You've submitted no counter-evidence. Do you wish to deny these charges?" Cassandra opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "She's emotional. She didn't understand. We were just helping her." The judge raised an eyebrow. "By locking her out of accounts, submitting documents with falsified diagnoses, threatening to send her to an assisted living facility under pretense, silence, Mrs. Jenkins. This court finds sufficient grounds to proceed with a full investigation. In the meantime, all legal authority over Ruth Jenkins is hereby revoked from Cassandra Jenkins. A protective order is granted, effective immediately." The gavel came down, and with that sound, I felt something I hadn't in over a year: certainty. Outside the courtroom, Dana turned to me. "We'll begin the civil suit filing next week, if you want." I nodded, but in truth, I didn't care about the money. I cared about one thing only: getting my name back, getting my voice back, getting my place back. Do you think that was enough? Or should she face more: jail, public exposure, family disgrace? What does justice look like when the betrayal came in whispers, not weapons? Tell me in the comments, because I don't just want peace, I want accountability. That evening, I sat on the porch for the first time in months. No fear, no confusion, no camera blinking above me. Cassandra had ripped it down before storming off. Jack brought me tea, quietly, with 2 sugars, just the way I used to make it for him when he was little. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," he said. I nodded, then whispered, "I don't want revenge. I just want to be myself again." He looked at me, and for the first time since all this began, he said, "Then let's start over." But even then, I knew there was still one thing left unfinished, because not all damage is legal. Some of it is emotional, and that would take longer to fix. 1 month after the court hearing, I stood in the backyard garden holding a small pair of shears, trimming the overgrown rose bushes I'd once let go wild. The spring air was soft. Light filtered through the branches of the old lemon tree my husband and I planted the year Jack was born. Bees buzzed, distant but present. And for the first time in what felt like a century, I felt present too. No more court dates, no more forged documents, no more tiptoeing through my own hallway like an uninvited guest. The house was quiet now, not eerily, but peacefully. Cassandra had moved out 2 weeks after the judge's ruling. Not because we forced her. She chose to leave, but not before making sure her exit was dramatic enough to blame on unfair systems and misunderstood intentions. She packed quickly, refused help, and left no forwarding address. I didn't ask where she went. Jack didn't volunteer the information. What mattered was that she was gone, and I was still here. But this wasn't a story about reclaiming a house. It was about reclaiming a self. And so I started small. I repainted the walls in the upstairs hallway, not beige like before, but a soft sage green that felt both new and grounded. I unpacked my old recipe cards, refiled them by season, and pinned the one for my husband's favorite stew to the fridge like a badge of honor. I found my wedding portrait, the one Cassandra had boxed up and labeled Legacy Archive, and hung it in the foyer again. But I didn't hang it where it used to be. I hung it higher. A few days later, I did something bolder. I hosted my 67th birthday party. The invitations were handwritten. The food was mine, old recipes from scratch. No pre-made trays. I wore a long blue dress, soft pearl earrings, and my silver hair tied back with the ribbon my granddaughter had once wrapped around a Christmas gift. People came, neighbours, church friends, even Margaret from watercolour class, who brought a bottle of sparkling cider and a card that read, "To the woman who remembered how to take up space." Jack arrived late. He brought Ava, who ran up the porch steps yelling, "Grandma, Grandma." I bent down and hugged her, hard. She handed me a folded piece of construction paper with glitter glued to the edges. Inside, she had drawn our house 3 windows, a chimney, and me in the middle, standing by the front door with a speech bubble that said, "This is my home." After cake, Jack lingered by the kitchen counter. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, voice low, "for not hating me." "I didn't hate you," I said. "I waited for you." He looked down. "I should have seen it. You were trying to keep peace." He nodded. "At the cost of your voice." I touched his hand, but I got it back. "And I forgive you. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just stood there, and that was enough." That weekend, I took an even bigger step. I reopened the community pantry program I used to volunteer for. Only this time, I didn't just help. I ran it. We called it Second Bloom. A food and support circle for women over 60 who had been displaced, manipulated, or simply forgotten. We met twice a week, shared recipes, shared stories, and every time a woman said, "I thought it was just me," I smiled and said, "That's what they count on." Because sometimes healing isn't about vengeance, it's about legacy. Have you ever known someone who went from being erased to being unforgettable? Tell their story in the comments. Let someone else be inspired by their strength. Because every return begins with being seen. The house didn't change overnight, but it changed in ways that mattered. I left the smart locks untouched, but I added a bell chime by the door so when someone entered, I would know. I brought back Sunday dinners, not for everyone, just for those who wanted to be here. I put out 3 place settings, one for me, one for Jack, one for Ava. The 4th seat stayed empty for now, and that's okay. Some empty seats are reminders, not of what we lost, but of what we will never allow again. That morning, as I sipped tea by the window, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection. Hair silver, eyes steady, hands strong, not old, not weak, not fading, just me. Finally, fully me. And if you've stayed with me this long, I want to say thank you. You didn't just watch a story. You witnessed a woman reclaim her life. If you want to hear more stories like this, raw, emotional, real, don't forget to subscribe. There are so many voices still waiting to be heard. I may be 67, but I'm just getting started.